thank you for joining us for today's DataIQ 100 podcast. I'm David Reed, Chief Knowledge Officer and Evangelist at DataIQ, and I'm delighted that joining us in the studio we have Ryan Moore, Director of Data at The Guardian. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you, David. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're delighted to see you, and some of our audience may know that we included you in this year's DataIQ 100, the Europe 2026 list. What happened since that landed? Has anything changed for you? What impact did that have, apart from obviously blowing up your LinkedIn feed?
I've been in data for a couple of decades now. So somehow managed to keep a fairly low profile. So not been big on building personal brand so all of this is kind of new to me. But just going through the list, the rest of the 100, I can see my former bosses, colleagues, clients, people I've met along the way. So I think the first thing was it's quite a warm feeling to be kind of officially included in that list of your peers. But one thing it definitely has changed for me is over this time I've kind of built some knowledge capital. So it's opened up a few opportunities for me to kind of share that knowledge capital with the next generation. So a few, academia resources and educational institutions and universities have been in touch. And it's a really nice feeling when you kind of help the next generation get into a field that you really enjoy working in.
Did you see that perhaps with your team, that they were going, oh, I work for someone who's had this recognition?
I think there's elements of that. And I think that from my team itself and the wider sort of data community, it's warmed them up to the idea of having recognition or sharing your work. And I think we've been nominated for a few other awards as well. So definitely a positive effect in getting people more comfortable in sharing our work.
Okay, yes, and you talked there about knowledge share, and as you know, at the heart of DataIQ, we're all about trying to enable the success of data and AI leaders and their teams beyond just the recognition piece. So, our service is about bringing people together to try to resolve some challenges. And I wondered whether there was a strategic reason why perhaps you've begun to engage with us and our community.
Yeah, I think there's two reasons. The first one, as you're probably aware, there's so much of information overload around data and AI, right? If you go on LinkedIn, there's quite a few experts out there. So we kind of use the service to kind of separate that signal from the noise. That's really important to us. And the second reason was, in terms of a service, we've got quite a sort of large data community, quite a vibrant, engaged community as well. So we wanted a service that was for everyone, not just a select few in the SLT team or anything like that. And I found it to be a benefit for the whole community rather than a select few people.
Yes, we've seen quite a number of people from The Guardian engaging with roundtables and accelerators and masterclasses, which is fantastic. And I think it is really important to try to spread that knowledge, because there aren't that many roles that aren't touched by data and AI these days. Have you faced anything really specific where having the ability to talk to another organization or an expert that's resolved that has perhaps been critical to how you've moved forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a few months back, we were at this kind of crossroads when it came to literacy, because we were, championing or at least shaping our data literacy program at the time. And there was also an AI literacy program that was being launched. So we were at a crossroads in terms of, do we merge these two programs? Do we, run them in parallel, run them separately? And we kind of tapped into the expert advice service. That worked out really well for us because we were, able to identify which elements need to, be merged in. And we figured out how these two programs kind of complement each other. And that's gone a really long way in terms of informing our roadmap for data literacy, our plans for data literacy, and massive influence in our data strategy for 26, 27.
Well, you'll probably get asked by other members of our community to share some of that back, because everyone seems to be trying to figure out whether data literacy and AI literacy are the same or different. What about something that surprised you? I mean, a lot of the questions that come up, of course, are fairly familiar. As you said, you've been in data for 20 years. We seem to experience a kind of rinse and repeat cycle, but sometimes, an issue surfaces and you go, oh yeah, I hadn't really thought about that.
Yeah. No, I think for, at least in my past two roles, both, I think product thinking and data to value, we've defined our own sort of data to value framework, and a lot of the content on DataIQ and a few other services has kind of influenced that. And it's been peer-based. It's kind of learning from what others have done. And I think those two elements, that's a step change in the industry. Product thinking has existed in the UX and product engineering space, but it's relatively new to the data space. So I think it's the last 5 years that data products has kind of emerged as perhaps as an influence of data mesh thinking. But we've embraced those two approaches quite closely, and we've got our product and strategy team, and they really lent into how they embed that product thinking for any data asset or any piece of work that we do.
Yeah, no, it's actually the subject of a peer exchange we're running this very afternoon, funnily enough, talking about data products. It does seem to be a real area of interest right now. Yeah. But it is a mindset shift.
No, absolutely. It is a mindset shift, because I think previously, data was seen to be this kind of technical capability. Perhaps, when the era of business intelligence was happening, it kind of, it did become this hybrid capability that sits between technology and the business. But I think now, when we package up our deliverables as products, we insist on having a clear line of sight between value and the product that we're releasing. So a lot of that goes into observability, monitoring, telemetry, and whatnot. But yeah, it is definitely a mindset shift.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned your career in this industry, your career as a data leader. And from conversations that we have, it often feels like data has reached various decision points, and you can go one way or another. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
And sometimes the things that don't always go the way you expected end up having the stronger lessons for you. I wonder if you maybe have an example where you felt tested, but then you found a way forward.
Yeah, absolutely. There have been several situations like that, and I love working for organizations where you're brave with your innovation, and you're able to try new things, and sort of when things don't work out, to be able to put your hands up and say, what, that path didn't work, and having that environment is crucial. So the one stands out. I think in a previous role, we were responsible for relaunching a digital platform. And this was for a fairly large sort of retailer, where we had to, through mergers and acquisitions, there was, multiple business entities involved. And we were responsible for all of the data elements of that, digital transformation. And we actually brought this in-house as a challenge from one of the big five. And we had about 18 months to kind of deliver this project. And one of the most complex elements from that project was the master data management. That's a kind of forgotten art. People tend to, master data management, metadata management has existed for years.
Yep.
But it's only when you come to massive transformations like that those capabilities you have to shine light on. And it was extremely complex, because we're working with customer data, product data, a bunch of other kind of master data management sets. And I remember my CDO at the time telling me, Ryan, customer data is sacrosanct. It is sacred. If you mess up customer master data, you lose the customer at that first point in their journey. As soon as they log into the app or the website, if you've got their details wrong, you lose them. So there was a lot of pressure to get it right. I think there was also this commitment that we'd made to our customers. So I think that was added pressure. So, but however, we went through it. It was a great team, amazing collaboration between all the different capabilities, and we did deliver it on time. There were a few frayed nerves, tired faces, lost tempers, but I think I came away from that feeling, even more resilient, even more confident, and perhaps a little bit more professional in how I go after these things.
It's a good example. There's nothing like landing one of those huge projects that feels it's on a knife edge.
Yeah.
And then it goes live and it works.
Yeah. That success is a little bit sweeter.
Yeah, absolutely right. But then, in the spirit of that sort of radical honesty, is there a hard truth that you think maybe data leaders are a little bit shy about speaking out loud?
I think I'd probably draw on this quote that I've seen in quite a few presentations that data leaders kind of put forward, and I don't know, I forget who it's by, but it usually goes along the lines of, without data, we only have opinions. Something along those lines.
I think you'll find that on the masthead of The Guardian.
I don't know about that.
Everyone has opinions. Facts are sacred.
Facts are sacred, yes. But so this one is a quote about data.
Okay.
And without data, you only have opinions. And there's this assumption that as soon as you have all the data, the path will become super clear, and it'll be so easy to make a decision. And the truth is, no, it's never as easy. The data helps, it informs, it guides, but at the end of the day, data teams are usually brought in to either prove a hunch or disprove a hunch, or prove a gut feel or disprove a gut feel. And, I think it's really, really important that data leaders take a stance or have an opinion, even if it's, so don't sit on the fence in terms of, make a recommendation. And I think that's really valuable, because with the analytics agents and AI coming in, they will start to produce these synthesized opinions, these synthesized recommendations. And to be honest, that's not a world I'm looking forward to. I prefer a world with human gut feel and human experience driven.
Interesting. Yes, I was chairing a panel at the London AI Summit yesterday, and we were talking about decision fatigue in the C-suite, and of course that problem of information overload and kind of craving some certainty.
Yeah.
And looking for someone to go in and say, well, let's cut through that noise. Here are the options, and this is the one I would recommend. And then your exec can take it or they can leave it. Ultimately, it is them who have to make the choice and also take the burden of the outcome.
True. I mean, I think it's really important for data leaders to kind of take a stance, make a recommendation, like you said. And that, initiates a dialogue. It initiates a challenge. It initiates a conversation. And the byproduct of that conversation could be a right decision or could be a wrong one. But, creating that environment for people to be able to say, this is my recommendation, have a dialogue and a conversation about it, and then make that decision and run with that decision. That's really important for data leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we talked about the learnings that come through career and through success, but if there was something you could go back and tell yourself earlier on that would be really useful to have known then, what would that be?
Oh, wow, that's a very good question. I think, I'd definitely say learn to enjoy the process. And it's going to sound a bit cliched and contradictory, but it's not as much about the destination. It's also about how we get there, having fun while you get there, creating relationships while you get there. I think that's the one thing I would do, probably learn to enjoy the process. I suppose it's also, within data, there's opportunities around every corner. There's tons of product briefs and tons of things that we could go after and deliver. In hindsight, I'd probably be a little more measured and informed in which opportunities to go after.
Okay, interesting. Good. So is it possible to summarize then, in 2026, what does good data leadership look like?
I'm going to paraphrase from our kind of technology department's objective. I think it's about being a trusted partner to the business and to your team, right? Because the tech is changing rapidly, and with all of these changes, we're not just looking. There's a bit of hype. There's a lot of hype, and in some cases, there's in fact this kind of panic around. We're going to miss this opportunity. So I think in 2026, being a trusted partner to the business, being a trusted voice that can, navigate these kind of complicated, choppy waters ahead. I think that's really crucial in 2026.
Good advice. Okay, so across the podcast series, we're tag teaming between our guests. So each time someone leaves behind a question for the person who follows them, and you don't need to know who this came from, but let me give you the question that's been left on the table for you. So if you walked into a new business and had to deliver commercial growth from your data function quite quickly, what would be the big thing that you would look at delivering?
I'm a big fan of the First 90 Days book. I'm not sure if you've read it. And, it kind of divides your first sort of entry into the business, into any new business, and how you go about building relationships, identifying those sort of quick wins, etc. For me, because of the model, the business model that we operate under, going after value immediately was balanced with values. So my mantra is kind of value without compromising on values. So that's something that really informed. So as we went through that kind of process, a few things that jumped out was we had to go after kind of increasing our subscribers. We had to go after increasing contributions, but we also wanted to ensure that our journalism was impactful. We also had to ensure that we brought more readers from different demographics back. So I can't talk in detail which solutions I went after, but definitely I think the guiding light for me was value without compromising on values.
Yeah, absolutely. A good mantra. So, Ryan, as you tag out from the DataIQ 100 podcast and a new guest tags in, we'd like you to leave a question behind for them on the table.
Sure.
What would it be?
With the whole industry now kind of focused on outcome driven and value driven, how do you deal with visibility being confused with value?
Right.
Context is dashboards. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, we look forward to seeing if we can get an answer on that question. Ryan Moore, Director of Data, The Guardian, thank you very much for joining us on the DataIQ 100 podcast. And thanks to everyone who has enjoyed watching us. Please like, link, and share.
Great stuff. No, thank you very much for having me, David.
You're very welcome.